The storm hit just as they crossed the final bend in the mountain pass. Trees swayed like skeletal arms in the wind, clawing at the sky. The headlights of the van flickered, briefly illuminating a weather-worn wooden sign half swallowed by the snow. Black Hollow Lodge, established 1906. Inside the van, 7 friends sat in uneasy silence. The trip was supposed to be a reunion, a weekend of laughter and memories. But something in the air, the biting cold, the oppressive silence of the forest, or perhaps the remote, godless location, was gnawing at their nerves. "Are you sure this is the place?" Emily asked, staring at the dark silhouette of the lodge emerging through the fog. "Yeah," said Josh, the one who'd arranged the trip. "It's owned by a friend of my uncle. Said we'd have the whole place to ourselves." The lodge loomed at the end of the path like a dead thing with too many eyes, dozens of windows, most dark, some glowing faintly as if remembering old light. The van creaked to a halt. No welcoming lights, no sign of life. Chris stepped out first, boots crunching against the snow. "Jesus, it's colder than a crypt out here." They unloaded their bags in silence. No one said it aloud, but they all felt it, that prickling sensation just beneath the skin, the feeling of being watched. The woods were too quiet. No animals. No wind now. Just a heavy silence, suffocating and unnatural. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of rot and dust. The furniture was covered in dusty sheets. A grand chandelier hung above the foyer, swaying slightly though there was no draft. A grand staircase curled up into darkness like a beckoning tongue. Josh handed out old-fashioned iron keys to each friend. "Pick a room, get settled. Dinner's in the kitchen, pre-stocked fridge. We'll light a fire, play some games, maybe hit the trails tomorrow." But none of them moved. They just stood there, hesitant. Then came the sound. A thump. From above. Very faint. Like something heavy shifting on old wood. Jessica laughed nervously. Probably a raccoon. Or some animal in the attic. They all forced chuckles and shrugged it off. Later, as they unpacked in their rooms, Sam stood by the window, staring out into the woods. The snow had stopped falling, revealing dense pine trees stretching endlessly, their shadows long and jagged under the crescent moon. For a moment, she thought she saw something, a figure, unmoving, between 2 trees. She blinked. Gone. She shook her head and drew the curtain shut. Downstairs, Mike lit the fireplace, the flames crackling with strange, oily sparks. Chris grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet. They tried to laugh, to drink, to make the place feel less like a tomb. But that feeling never left, the sensation of being watched, of something not quite right in the walls. Dinner was barely eaten. The meat had a strange taste, the texture too soft, too slick. Ashley spit hers out after biting something hard. It was a tooth. A human molar. Josh paled. Okay, maybe the food was old. I'll check the fridge. Could be a prank or something. From who? Matt asked. We're in the middle of nowhere. Then the power died. Every light flicked off at once. The fireplace snapped out like a smothered scream. Total blackness. Jessica screamed, fumbling for her phone. No signal. The flashlight flickered on, shaky and pale. What the hell is going on? Emily barked. I'll check the breaker, Josh stammered. I'll go with you, Chris offered, voice thin. The others huddled in the living room, clutching their phones like talismans. Minutes passed. Then a scream tore through the house. Sam jumped to her feet. That was Chris. They ran toward the basement stairs, flashlights dancing across the cracked wallpaper and warped floorboards. The air grew colder the deeper they went. At the base of the stairs, Chris was slumped against the breaker box, blood pouring from a deep gash in his shoulder. Josh was gone. Chris's eyes were wide, mouth trembling. It wasn't human, he whispered. Whatever it was, it moved wrong. Too fast. No face. They dragged him upstairs, wrapped the wound with torn sheets. He shook, teeth chattering uncontrollably. I told you, he muttered. This place isn't abandoned. Emily screamed again. They turned just in time to see a shape scuttle across the hallway, too tall, too thin, almost insectal. The flashlight caught a glimpse, gray flesh, stretched tightly over elongated limbs, and no eyes, just black, gaping sockets that dripped something thick and writhing. Then it was gone. They locked the doors, barricaded the windows, huddled close in the living room. No one goes alone, Mike whispered. Until dawn, we stay together. Outside, the wind howled, carrying with it something worse than cold, a deep, guttural whisper that slithered through the cracks in the walls and windows. It spoke no language they understood. But it understood them. And it was hungry. As the grandfather clock struck midnight, a door upstairs slammed open. Heavy footsteps followed. Then. Scratching. Long, deliberate, clawing scratches along the hallway floor above them. Josh, Sam whispered. But everyone knew, it wasn't Josh. Not anymore. They were not alone in the lodge. They never had been. And now that it had tasted them, it wouldn't stop. Not until dawn. Not until they were all part of it. The scratches went on for hours. Long, slow, deliberate. Like whatever was above wanted them to know it was there. Every few minutes it would pause, as though listening, waiting for one of them to move, to breathe too loud, to break the fragile barrier between the living and whatever it was. Emily clutched Chris's hand tightly as his blood seeped through the makeshift bandage, dark and warm. His face was pale, and his eyes kept darting toward the ceiling. I saw it, he kept whispering. It wasn't a mask. It was skin, its own skin. Like it had been stitched onto a skull that was never human. The others didn't speak. Their silence was a shield, thin and brittle, but it was all they had. Then, a loud crash from upstairs. Something heavy. Something falling. Then silence again. Mike stood slowly, flashlight in hand. I need to check on Josh. He could be hurt. Or worse. No. Jessica hissed. You saw it, Mike. That thing, it's not human. If Josh is gone, then he's gone. No one gets left behind, Mike said. His voice shook, but his eyes were hard. We came up here together. We leave together. Reluctantly, Sam joined him. We'll go together. 10 minutes. If we're not back. You're already dead, Chris muttered under his breath. They crept into the darkened hall, flashlights sweeping across peeling wallpaper, warped floorboards, and framed family portraits whose eyes had long faded into black pits. The lodge groaned around them like it was breathing, settling deeper into the mountain's rot. Upstairs was colder. Wrong. The hallway stretched endlessly, though they knew it hadn't been this long before. Doors lined both sides, most ajar, some swinging gently with invisible drafts. And then they saw the trail. Blood. Dark and wet, smeared along the floorboards and splashed on the walls. It led to the farthest room at the end of the hall. The door stood wide open. Inside, the window was shattered, snow drifting in like ashes. A rope of torn fabric hung from the sill, trailing down into the darkness outside. Josh was gone. Only his phone remained, its screen shattered, the camera still recording. Sam picked it up. The last video was still playing. She hit replay. The footage was shaky, Josh whispering into the lens, saying he heard someone in the walls. Then came the noise, whispering not from behind him but from inside the phone, like it had been listening, too. A sudden jolt, the the camera flying from his hands, a glimpse of something crawling across the ceiling with limbs bending the wrong way, and then the video ended with the sound of crunching. Jesus Christ, Sam breathed. Mike walked to the window. The makeshift rope didn't reach the ground. Far below, snow was churned, someone had landed. Whether they had survived was another question. Then came the growl. Low, guttural, echoing from inside the walls. Mike turned to Sam. We need to go. Now. They bolted down the stairs, but the hallway twisted, distorted. Doors were not where they had been. The staircase looped in impossible angles. Paintings bled from their eyes. Whispers followed them, taunting, calling each of their names. It was as though the house was alive, and hungry. Finally, they found the stairs. Chris and the others rushed to meet them. Where's Josh? Emily demanded. Gone, Mike said, chest heaving. Jumped or was taken. Something's in the walls. Suddenly, the floor beneath Chris cracked. He screamed as his leg plunged through the wood, a black slimy hand grabbing his ankle. Ashley pulled at him, shrieking. Mike rushed to help. But then they saw what was under the floorboards. Eyes. Dozens of eyes, human and not, embedded in wet, twitching flesh, all staring upward. A yawning mouth opened within the boards themselves, filled with rows of bone-white teeth. Chris screamed as something began to pull him downward. Don't let go. Ashley cried, tears streaking her face. Mike struck the floor with a fire iron, breaking the edge. The hand snapped backward, letting go. Chris was free. But not untouched. His ankle had been crushed. The flesh now pulsated, black veins spreading up his leg. We need help, Sam said. We need to get out. The van's dead, Jessica whispered. I checked earlier. Something slashed the tires. Deep gashes. Not animal. We're trapped, Emily muttered. No, Mike said. There's a ranger tower. Half a mile through the woods. I saw it on the map. If we can reach it, we can call for help. Assuming it still exists, Chris added grimly. This place, it's not normal. Time, space, none of it makes sense. Suddenly, the front door creaked open on its own. Snow howled through the opening. Footprints began forming in the snow, one after another, leading inside, but with no body making them. Ashley screamed. The door slammed shut. And then a voice echoed through the lodge. Not loud. Not angry. Just curious. Who's next? The fireplace reignited by itself. Its flames forming faces, mouths screaming, vanishing in smoke. Chris convulsed. The veins had reached his thigh. His skin bulged unnaturally. It's changing me, he gasped. It's in me. The group recoiled. We have to go, Sam said. We either stay and die, or run through that forest and pray to God something out there still answers. They gathered what they could, knives from the kitchen, flashlights, lighters. They didn't look back as they opened the side door and stepped into the snow-covered forest, the wind screaming like 1,000 mouths. Behind them, the lodge groaned, laughing softly. The mountain had woken up. And it was still hungry. Until dawn, they had to survive. The forest was wrong. It wasn't just the way the trees leaned unnaturally inward like they were eavesdropping or the sickly color of the snow, gray, like ash, but the silence. There were no owls, no wind, no crunch of small creatures beneath the frost. Only their footsteps, and the occasional snap of a twig behind them, always just far enough to pretend it was the wind. But the wind didn't breathe. Mike led the group with the dim glow of a flashlight, but the beam flickered with every step. Chris hobbled in the middle, supported by Emily and Ashley. His leg had turned purple, swollen, with black, pulsing veins stretching to his hip. "You're slowing us down," Emily snapped, more out of panic than anger. Chris looked up, sweat dripping from his chin. "You think I'm doing this for fun?" "We don't have time to argue," Mike muttered. "We're halfway. Another 20 minutes, and we'll hit the tower." Then Sam stopped. She held her hand up. Everyone froze. In the distance, through the mist, stood a figure. Too tall. Limbs too long. Its head tilted, as if it were listening. It didn't move. It just watched. The flashlight flickered again, and when it returned, the figure was gone. Jessica whimpered. Mike stepped forward, brandishing the hunting knife they'd taken from the lodge. "Stay close. No one splits off." The woods grew denser. The pines grew too close together, branches scraping their faces like fingers. They passed old hunting cabins, long since collapsed, their windows shattered. At one point, they stumbled over something buried in the snow, a jawbone, snapped clean and still dripping black fluid that steamed in the cold. Chris collapsed soon after. He screamed, writhing in the snow, his leg seizing violently. "It's inside him!" Ashley cried. "We have to help him." His mouth opened, and a horrible choking sound burst from his throat. Not a scream. A croak, like something wet and ancient trying to mimic speech. His eyes rolled back. Then something moved beneath his skin, something crawling. Mike pulled Ashley away. "Get back." Chris's mouth opened wider than it should, tearing at the corners. Something pressed out of his throat, a dark, barbed limb. He screamed as his jaw cracked sideways, flesh splitting. "I'm sorry," Mike whispered. He drove the knife deep into Chris's chest. Chris convulsed, then went still, mouth frozen in a scream. Ashley sobbed uncontrollably. Then they heard it. From deeper in the forest, the scream. But not Chris's. It was identical, down to the tone, pitch, and panic. But Chris was dead. "Keep moving," Sam whispered, pulling Jessica with her. Behind them, the scream echoed again, then turned into laughter. High-pitched. Childlike. The forest mocked them. They found a path at last, half buried under snow and rotted leaves. And at the top of a ridge, silhouetted by a dead sky, was the ranger tower. It looked abandoned. No lights. No signal. But it was shelter. They moved quickly, dragging their grief and terror with them. The door creaked open with a low groan. Inside, the station was in disrepair, broken furniture, shattered glass, walls scratched with symbols they didn't recognize. In the center of the room, a desk with a radio unit, covered in dust. Mike rushed to it, frantically turning knobs. Come on. Static. Then, a voice. Faint. Male. "This is Outpost Echo, please identify." Over. Mike's hands shook. "This is Mike Monroe. We're trapped on Blackwood Mountain, something's killing us. Please, send help, please." Silence. Then the voice replied. "Already sent someone." Static again. Sam stepped forward. "What do you mean? Who did you send?" The voice was different now. Slower. Familiar. "Me." Then the radio screamed, distorting into a blast of static and noise so loud that blood leaked from Ashley's nose. Jessica threw it off the desk. It shattered. They stood in silence. Then Sam pointed to the corner of the room. A mirror. Cracked. It had begun to fog up, from the other side. A message slowly appeared, written by an invisible hand. "Don't turn around." Ashley gasped. "What the hell is this?" "Don't look," Sam whispered, her voice trembling. Mike turned slowly, despite the warning. There, outside the broken window, stood a figure. Naked, tall, covered in dirt and blood. Its skin was stretched too tightly, face a blank mask except for its mouth, wide open in a grin of broken teeth. It raised one hand. And waved. Then it vanished. The others turned, but nothing was there. They locked the doors, barred the windows with what remained of the furniture, and tried to breathe. Night was far from over. Ashley sat in the corner, rocking, whispering something over and over. Sam moved closer. "What are you saying?" Ashley looked up. Her eyes were not hers anymore, milky white, no pupils. She spoke with two voices. "It comes when you forget." "What?" "The dark is part of you. It is part of you." Ashley suddenly seized, her limbs spasming. Her mouth opened and a stream of cold mist poured out, forming shapes in the air, faces, reaching hands. Jessica screamed. And then Ashley collapsed. Unconscious. Or worse. Mike backed toward the stairwell that led to the roof. "We can signal from up top. There has to be a flare or something." They ascended, leaving Ashley below. The wind was savage on the rooftop, snow biting at their skin. But in the center stood an emergency kit. Inside, a flare gun. Mike fired it into the sky. It exploded in red fire, painting the forest in bloodlight. For a moment, they dared to hope. Until they looked down. From above, the forest was moving. Shapes running, not animals, not people. Twisting, crawling on too many limbs. Headless. Mouths in their chests. One was walking on its face. And they were coming fast. Sam turned to Mike, pale. "They know where we are now." Far below, the flare's light revealed a circle of figures forming around the tower. Silent. Waiting. Watching. The creatures would wait. Because they had all night. And the survivors only had until dawn. The sky above them was the color of bruises, deep and unforgiving, an unbroken mass of swirling clouds that seemed to stretch forever. The flare's red glow slowly faded, its light swallowed by the dark, leaving the group huddled on the roof, surrounded by the hunger of the woods. They had a choice, fight or die. But the creatures that circled the tower below weren't human. They were a presence more than bodies, twisted, contorted, a parody of flesh and bone. They moved too fast to be real, their limbs too long, their shadows stretching like they were trying to touch everything. Mike turned, breathing hard, face pale as he scanned the horizon. "We're not safe up here. We need to barricade the roof," he said. His voice was frantic, laced with fear they hadn't seen in him before. "We won't last," Sam whispered. Her hands trembled as she clutched her jacket tighter around her shoulders. "We need to find a way to escape. If those things know where we are, they'll break through anything we put up." Suddenly, a sound. A voice, faint but growing louder, drifting from the base of the tower. Crying. Soft at first, like a child. Broken. Then it shifted. From the crying came a laughter, not childish, but inhuman, jagged, and ragged. Like a stitching of souls. "What's that?" Jessica's voice broke as she whispered, her wide eyes darting nervously between the others. "It's trying to get in," Mike said, stepping forward, eyes bloodshot. "They always use voices. First, they call you. Then, they steal you." "Not again," Sam whispered, her heart hammering in her chest. The wind howled, pushing against the tower like a living thing. The creatures were patient. They knew the survivors couldn't stay forever. And as the cold night stretched on, the temperature began to plummet. They could feel the weight of the darkness creeping closer. Cold that bit, that burned. Sam moved toward the edge of the roof and peered down. The shadows beneath the trees shifted like long fingers, creeping closer to the tower. "What the hell are they waiting for?" she murmured. The question hung in the air. "They're not just waiting for us to get desperate," Mike said, his voice breaking. "They're toying with us. Drawing us out." A noise. A wet, gurgling scream echoed through the air. They all turned to face the staircase leading to the roof. A shape emerged, crawling on all fours with twisted limbs, like an animal that had learned to mimic human motion. Its skin was stretched tight, and its face had been rearranged. The features were warped, as though its skull had been forcibly split, the eyes bulging from unnatural sockets. It didn't speak. It watched. And then, as if to mock them, it smiled. Its jaws stretched impossibly wide, as though its face had been ripped open and sewn back together. Mike's hand went to the knife at his belt. He backed away slowly. "It won't die," he whispered, shaking his head. "Nothing will die." The thing reached out with one elongated hand, fingers bent backward at unnatural angles. It dragged its body toward them, leaving behind a trail of thick, black fluid that hissed as it met the cold metal of the roof. "Move!" Sam screamed. But before they could react, the thing lunged. Sam grabbed Jessica and yanked her out of the way, but Mike wasn't quick enough. The creature's hand shot out, grabbing him by the throat. His scream was short, choked off as the thing lifted him into the air. His legs kicked wildly, but it was no use. Sam could only watch as Mike's face turned purple, his eyes bulging. Then, with a sickening snap, the creature twisted his neck. Mike's body went limp. But it wasn't done. No. The creature slowly set his body down, its gaze never leaving Sam and Jessica. Then, it tore open Mike's chest. A dark, roiling mass of writhing tendrils poured out, squirming like a sea of maggots. The tendrils extended outward, snaking across the ground, reaching for anything they could touch, digging into the snow. "Mike!" Jessica screamed, her voice breaking. Sam stepped forward, her hands shaking. "We can't help him. We can't stop it." The creature stood there, still, as the mass of writhing tendrils grew. Its eyes, now empty pits, stared at them as though daring them to make a move. Without thinking, Sam grabbed Jessica's wrist. "We need to run. Now." But as they turned, they heard the sound. From the darkness below, there was a noise, like metal grinding against stone, or the sound of something too big to comprehend moving, crawling, reaching. And then, it wasn't just one voice anymore. From all around them, voices began to whisper. First faintly, then louder. They recognized the words, names. Their names. Each whisper felt like a needle in their skin, making them shiver. Making them doubt. Jessica stumbled backward, eyes wide with terror. "They're here. They're in the trees." Sam pulled her away, but there was no escape. The forest was alive, and the voices had begun to scream. The air turned thick with the scent of decay, and the trees seemed to twist in on themselves, bending and leaning, as though reaching out for them. The whispers turned to laughter, louder, sharper, as though the very mountain had begun to feed on their fear. Sam's chest tightened. The weight of the darkness pressed down on her, suffocating. She could feel the ground beneath her feet shift. The tower was no longer a place of shelter. It was a trap. "Run!" Sam screamed, as the darkness swallowed the light. And then, from the trees, they came. The creatures, twisted, wrong, hunted them. They scattered. They ran. And as Sam looked back, she could see Mike's body, still moving. Not dead. Not yet. He was changing. Into something else. The mountain swallowed sound like a beast digesting its prey. Sam couldn't even hear her own breath anymore, only the crunch of snow underfoot, the rasp of her heartbeat in her ears, and Jessica's ragged sobs trailing behind her. Trees bent and clawed at them, gnarled limbs scraping skin as though trying to peel them open. They didn't stop running. They couldn't. Behind them, the screeches continued, animal and human at once, wrong in a way that hurt to listen to. The forest no longer resembled the place they had hiked earlier. This wasn't nature. It was some kind of twisting memory, the earth itself bent into madness. Sam grabbed Jessica's wrist as they stumbled into a ravine, half sliding down the rocks until they collapsed at the bottom. The air was colder here. Not the chill of altitude, but a rotting cold, a dead, wet air that clung to their skin like mold. "Where are we?" Jessica whispered. Sam didn't answer. Because she didn't know. They weren't in the world anymore. Everything was off. Trees grew at impossible angles. Shadows moved where light never touched. And buried in the snow were faces, partially exposed beneath the ice, their mouths open in eternal, silent screams. Jessica touched one by accident. The eyes snapped open. She screamed and fell backward, scrambling away as the frozen corpse's head twitched, its jaw slowly unhinging to release a long, rattling gasp like air escaping an old crypt. "Help him," it began to say. But Sam pulled Jessica to her feet and ran, cutting the thing off before they could hear more. Behind them, the other frozen faces twitched, jaws cracking, whispering, begging. The snow crunched above. The things were following. Then, they reached it. A wide clearing in the center of the ravine. There, half buried in the frozen ground, stood an ancient mining elevator, rusted and broken, the gate twisted as though something had forced its way out. The sign above it had long since rotted, but part of it remained. OLOW Mine Shaft C. Do not descend. A symbol was carved into the frame, spirals with jagged teeth. And blood. Old, flaking, real blood. "We're not going down there," Jessica said, shaking her head. "We're not." Sam didn't want to either. But the howls were getting closer. And whatever was chasing them would not stop. Sam took a step toward the elevator shaft. "I think it's already too late." Jessica hesitated, then followed, eyes locked on the shadows around them. The elevator shuddered as they stepped in, its ancient gears groaning in protest. Sam found a crank half frozen in place and began to turn it. The descent began. Darkness swallowed them. The wind vanished. The only sound now was the creaking of metal, the groaning cables lowering them into the bowels of the mountain. 10 seconds in, the last sliver of daylight vanished. And they were truly alone. Or so they thought. A whisper slithered through the darkness. Jessica jerked. "Did you hear that?" Sam nodded slowly. Then. The lights came on. One by one, ancient bulbs overhead flickered to life, though none of them had power. The lights pulsed with a sickly yellow hue, almost biological, like something alive was breathing light into them. Then Sam saw the walls. The shaft wasn't carved entirely by human hands. Parts of it were, grown. Bone jutted from rock. Rib-like arches lined the passage. Veins of black flesh pulsed just beneath the surface. It was alive. They reached the bottom with a final screech of steel. A blast of hot, rancid air hit them like a wall. The cave ahead yawned open. And the smell. Rot. Death. Old blood. Burned skin. "Mike?" Jessica called out, her voice barely more than a whisper. Something moved in the dark ahead. A scraping sound. Like teeth on stone. Then, a voice. Too familiar. Too wrong. Jessica. It was Mike. But not. His voice was raw. Cracked. Sam raised her flashlight. And saw him. He stood there, shirtless, his skin stretched tight over his ribs. His eyes glowed with a faint orange light, and black tendrils pushed from beneath his flesh, twitching like worms. Mike?" Jessica stepped forward, trembling. He smiled. And his jaw cracked wide open, hinges splitting, a second set of jagged, needle-like teeth visible beneath. "I remember the cold," he said in a voice not his own. "I remember the sound of my bones breaking. It taught me how to feel again." Sam stepped between them. "You're not him." Mike, the thing wearing him, grinned wider. "No, Sam. I'm better." From the walls, hands burst out, decaying arms with broken fingers that reached for them. The very cave was alive, and it wanted them. Jessica screamed as one hand latched onto her leg, pulling. Sam lunged forward, using the flashlight like a club, bashing the thing's knuckles. Bones cracked. The hand recoiled. They ran. Deeper. No longer thinking, only fleeing. But the tunnels had changed. There were no paths. Only viscera. Pulsing, twitching walls. Whispers echoed from every direction, some in their voices, others sounding like loved ones long dead. "Sam," her sister's voice drifted from a nearby tunnel. "You left me in the cold." She never had a sister. Sam closed her eyes, blocking the tears. This place, it knew. It peeled open your mind, looking for the wounds. They reached a chamber at the tunnel's end. Inside, a pool of black liquid reflected no light. In the center, suspended above it, was a mass of flesh, tangled limbs, heads, and teeth. It writhed, aware of their presence. Jessica collapsed, sobbing. Sam dropped beside her. Above them, the flesh opened its many eyes. It smiled. And whispered. "Until dawn, you're mine." The pool of black liquid rippled, and in its surface, Sam could see their faces, contorted, wrong, grinning back at her. No reflection was ever truly still, every inch of it pulsed with life, with some twisting, dark energy that seemed to pull them in, drawing them closer to the nightmare at the heart of the mountain. Jessica's sobs were now desperate whispers, swallowed by the overwhelming presence of the mass above them. Its eyes, thousands of eyes, blinked at them from the jagged flesh hanging like grotesque curtains, their lids heavy with an ancient, terrifying wisdom. Sam could feel the weight of it all, the pull, the hunger. She wanted to look away, but the eyes compelled her. Then, the voice. Not their own. Never theirs. "You belong to me now." Sam's skin crawled. Jessica jerked her head up, eyes wide with a horrified recognition. What is that?" "A god," Sam whispered, a thought forming in the back of her mind that she refused to acknowledge. A god. But the thing, the creature, the heart of this forsaken place, didn't hear her. It was still too busy feeding on their fear. Its fleshy tendrils pulsed, drawing in air like a slow breath, each intake feeling like the world itself was exhaling in dread. Sam turned sharply, shaking off the panic. "We have to get out of here. Now." Her feet were already moving before the words finished, dragging Jessica behind her. She didn't know which way was up or down anymore. The tunnels around them stretched and warped like they were being folded, a labyrinth of flesh and metal, where everything felt like a twisted version of reality. But as Sam turned the corner, she saw something, a flicker of movement, and then something familiar. Her breath caught. It was Mike, but he was different. The last time she'd seen him, his body had been torn apart by that thing, his soul twisted into something monstrous. Now, though, he was walking toward them. Slowly. "Mike?" Sam's voice cracked. Her feet froze in place, as if the sound of his name had rooted her to the floor. This couldn't be him. Not after everything. Not after seeing what had become of him. He smiled. It wasn't his smile. His mouth was stretched far wider than a human's could ever go, his lips curled around a gaping gash that split his face in half. The flesh was melting away, a slow ooze dripping from his eyes and mouth, but there was something in his gaze. Something that shined. A hunger. He spoke in a voice grating, almost like sandpaper against stone. You should have joined me, Sam. You should have seen what I have become. His hand lifted, fingers twitching unnaturally as they reached for her. No, she gasped, backing away, but her legs wouldn't move fast enough. His hand shot out, grabbing her by the wrist, his grip icy cold. The tendrils of the thing at the heart of the mountain, the god, reached out from the walls, the flesh around her tightening, like hands pressing in on her from every direction. Jessica screamed, trying to pull Sam free, but it was too late. Sam felt a strange, sick sensation coil in her stomach. The air seemed to shudder around them, suffocating. Then, she heard it. From deep beneath them. A heartbeat. Slow. Steady. Dreadful. The walls seemed to breathe, and with each breath, the heartbeat grew louder, a pounding, sickening rhythm. Sam felt it deep inside her chest, like it was her own. It wasn't just the mountain. It wasn't just the god. It was them. The heartbeat was them. The mountain, the flesh, the voices, they all belonged to this force. No, Sam whispered. No, no, no. Mike's body jerked, his spine twisting in impossible directions. His eyes popped open, bloodshot and bulging. Join me, Sam, he croaked. Embrace it. Feel the hunger. Feel what it's like to consume and be consumed. We'll be together. Forever. Sam could feel it now, too. The pull. The temptation to give in. It was inside her, gnawing at her thoughts, making her feel empty. Hungry. Not for food. Not for anything human. But for something more. Something darker. The thing at the heart of the mountain wanted them to fall. It wanted them to let go. To lose themselves in its black, endless depths. She struggled, forcing herself to tear her eyes from Mike's twisted form, and in that moment, she saw it. The hole. In the walls, in the ceiling, deep in the pit of the ground, black, gaping, dark as the void itself. A pit filled with writhing, screaming bodies. The forgotten. The lost. The consumed. And it was calling her. Her breath quickened. She couldn't. Not like Mike. Not like them. Not like. But Mike, or the thing that used to be Mike, laughed. You'll join us, Sam. They always do. She couldn't run. Not with the pull of that thing growing heavier. Every step she took, it felt like something was clawing at her insides. Her heart thumped louder and louder until it threatened to tear her apart. Then, just as her will was about to crack. The screams. Not from the mountain. Not from Mike. Not from the god. But from Jessica. Sam's head snapped toward her. She saw it, then. The dark, swarming tendrils, like a cloud of poisonous air, wrapping around Jessica's legs, pulling her toward the pit. No. Sam cried, tearing herself from Mike's grip and lunging for Jessica. It was too late. The blackness was already swallowing Jessica's body. Her skin was rippling, twisting, her arms and legs snapping into grotesque, impossible angles. A scream echoed through the tunnels, one that wasn't just Jessica's. It was Sam's, too. And then, for the first time since they arrived on the mountain, the thing at the center of it all spoke again. Its voice a flood of terror and promise. Until dawn. And it was dawn. But there was no escape. The mountain quaked. A deep, unholy rumble that seemed to come from the very bones of the earth itself. Sam's chest tightened with a fear so raw, so primal, she could feel the pounding of her heart against her ribs, each beat dragging her closer to the edge of her sanity. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the dark abyss where Jessica had been swallowed. The pit, once a mere grotesque idea, was now an overwhelming, tangible presence. Her mind screamed for escape, for flight, for anything other than the slow, inevitable crawl toward the heart of this nightmare. But she couldn't move. The tendrils, thick and oily, squirmed beneath her feet, creeping across the ground, reaching toward her like hands. They pulsed with a sickening life of their own, a reminder of the terrible God that owned this place, that owned them. Jessica's scream still echoed in her mind, but now it was mingled with something else. Voices. Thousands of them. All calling to her. All begging, pleading to be freed. "Join us, Sam." The words came not from a mouth, but from every direction, filling the very air around her. Sam tried to scream, to shout, but her voice was swallowed by the sound of the heartbeat, growing louder, shaking the walls, tearing the fabric of reality itself. She stumbled backward, her legs giving way beneath her. Her hands gripped the jagged walls of flesh, the slick, warm surface of the tunnel pulsing beneath her fingertips. She could feel the heartbeat resonating in her bones, a pulsing rhythm that matched her own panic-stricken pulse. And then, from the darkness ahead, she saw it. Mike. But it wasn't Mike anymore. His face had been distorted beyond recognition, a mass of raw, bloody flesh, his mouth stretching into an unnatural grin. His body had been torn apart and stitched back together in grotesque, nightmarish ways. His eyes, once familiar, were blackened and wide, devoid of any humanity. He was alive, yet he was dead. "Sam," he rasped, his voice a whisper of agony, but still, it was the same. The same voice that had once called her name so softly. "Come to me." His outstretched hand beckoned her forward, and for a moment, Sam felt herself move toward him. Her body felt like it was no longer her own. Every step was an effort against the crushing force that was dragging her in. She could feel the darkness in the air, suffocating her, pulling her closer to the thing she knew was waiting. The thing at the heart of the mountain. Her breath came in sharp gasps, her pulse thundering in her ears. The vision of Mike's mutilated body was blurring, shifting, and in his place, the eyes, the thousand, black eyes, stared at her from every direction. The walls of the tunnel were now alive, breathing, shifting, as though the mountain itself were moving, growing, expanding. No. She couldn't. She couldn't give in to it. But the whispers came again. Soft, seductive. "It's too late, Sam. You've already taken your first step. You belong to us now." "No," Sam forced the words out, her voice trembling with the weight of defiance. She forced her body to move, to push away from the twisted mass of flesh and darkness that Mike had become. Her feet slipped on the slick surface, but she kept going, even as the walls closed in around her, pressing in, suffocating her with their presence. Her mind flashed to Jessica, the girl who had been her friend, her companion, now lost to the horrors of this place. The vision of Jessica's contorted face, her body broken by the tendrils, was burned into Sam's memory. Jessica hadn't been able to escape. But Sam could. She had to. Her thoughts went back to the others, Josh, Emily, the others who had fallen one by one. All of them consumed by the mountain, by the god beneath it. Every step closer to the pit was a step closer to losing herself forever. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet gave way, and Sam was falling. Falling into the blackness. Her scream was lost in the void, swallowed by the darkness. The wind howled in her ears, the tunnel spinning around her as she plunged deeper into the mountain's heart. The pit was closing in. The eyes. The faces. All of them, staring, watching her descent into the abyss. Then, just as quickly as it began, the fall stopped. Sam hit the ground with a sickening thud. Her breath was knocked out of her, and she gasped for air, her lungs burning, her mind spinning. The first thing she saw was the blood, a pool of it, spreading across the cold stone floor. The scent of rot and decay hung thick in the air, coating her throat with the taste of bile. And then she heard it. The heartbeat. It was louder now. So loud that it filled every inch of her mind. Sam's body trembled, her nerves on fire. She could feel it, deep in her chest, that unrelenting pulse that matched her own, that sick rhythm that resonated through her entire being. Something was moving in the darkness around her. Shapes, shadows, twisting and shifting. Voices whispered her name over and over, calling to her. Sam, a voice, so familiar, so wrong. Sam. She looked up, her heart hammering in her chest, her body frozen with fear. There, in the darkness, stood Jessica. But it wasn't Jessica. Her face was pale, gaunt, hollow. Her eyes were wide, empty, staring into Sam with a mix of hunger and despair. Her mouth opened, but it was no longer her voice. Join us. The thing, no, the God, was speaking through her now. The truth of it hit Sam like a wave, crashing down over her. The mountain wasn't just a place. It was alive, feeding, consuming them all, twisting their souls into something horrible. And now, it was calling her to become one with it. Sam screamed. But the mountain was already taking her. The last thing she saw before the darkness overtook her was Mike's grin, twisted and broken, as the heartbeat filled her ears, drowning everything in its suffocating rhythm. And then, until dawn, they would never be free. The end.